People who knew murders before they killed someone. What are some red flags you didn't notice? Said before but no clues. He was my friend's younger brother. Seemed like a little bit of an underachieving stoner but no warning signs of what he was capable of. Last memory of him was wrestling him for the last spare couch to crash on in the dwindling portion of a house party. He and one of his friends broke into the home of an elderly couple, slit their throats, and burned their house down to try to cover it up. All to steal their safe because they thought it had a bunch of cash in it. They were caught in a week. The worst part? This was small town Vermont. Town of hundreds. Everyone knew everyone. They played in the pool of the old couple during the summers as children. So effing pointless. Dude was very possessive of his girlfriend and kind of a dick. He ended up strangling her, tossing her body in the trunk of her car, driving to a busy grocery store and parking it. Then he skipped town. Ended up getting caught in a motel a few counties over because he missed work and the cops got his location off his phone GPS. He actually just got sentenced to life in prison last year. Nothing. I would have told you he was truly one of the nicest, kindest guys I'd ever met. He was a regular customer at a place my Sil bartended at. He was always nice, friendly, funny, a genuinely good guy. When the husband and I would visit Sil at work, he'd chat with us like we were old friends. He obviously had a bit of a crush on Sil, but she was involved and had a small child and he respected that. Never even hit on her. There were many nights he'd stay past close to help her clean up, take trash out, lug kegs for her. Sometimes they'd go over to the after hours bar with a couple other people. They got to know each other quite well over several years, or so we thought. Then one night Celeste's friend was at the bar and had too much so she couldn't drive. He offered to drive her home. Sil would never watch an impaired friend go out alone with just any customer, but she never thought twice about this. In fact, she even thought it was so like him to offer. Such a nice guy. She was happy her friend would get home safe. They found her friend's body the next day. She had been brutally read and mutilated, penetrated with multiple objects. I'll spare the details, but it was viscous. Then strangled to death. He apparently drove around with her body until almost sunup, not sure what to do with her when he decided to return to the bar. He dumped her body in the back alley next to the dumpster. Sil had to testify against him. In court it was brought to light that he had a history of violence against women. No murders, but several assaults. We were all absolutely shocked. By the way, I have told this story a few times, but someone in my town killed his wife when she started divorce proceedings, and then his neighbor when said neighbor was concerned about not seeing the wife for a couple of weeks. He buried them in shallow graves out on his property and they were found by a pair of hikers cutting through the property. I was a teenager when this happened, but the guy was friends with my parents, specifically my dad. I remember him as being a generally nice guy. After the last time this kind of thread was posted, I asked my dad about it. He said that the guy was well liked, very nice, involved in the town, but that he got odd over time. My dad says he thinks the guy had started drinking heavily. It wasn't a secret that there were problems in the marriage and it was known when the wife was looking for divorce. So my dad also told me that in the period of time between when the guy killed his wife and when he was caught out, he had seen him a few times and said that he seemed really happy, and that struck him as odd because, well, his wife was leaving him and the whole town knew. It was a real shock to the town. No one would have said he was capable of killing not just his wife but a second person as well. When I was a teenager hanging out in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven, a drunk older kid walked up to me and ripped my glasses off my face and tried to hockey fight me. Completely out of the blue, I headbutted him in the nose and bravely ran away, Sir Robin style. I heard that a couple years later he stabbed someone to death in a similar incident. I guess his interaction with me helped him hone his craft. So I worked with a guy, and one day he seemed upset. He got married young and he feared his wife, who separated from him, was starting to date his ex-best friend. I said, "That's tough. Sorry to hear it. You're young." Next, he immediately got this intense look and said he'd kill them. I told him, "You don't want to say that," and blew it off. It seemed like blowing off steam kind of comment, but I was surprised at the intensity. Normally an extremely laid-back guy. However, I felt it strange enough that I wanted to walk away. 6 months later he went to his old apartment at 6 AM, and the two were in bed. He entered their bedroom, put them on their knees and shot each in the head. He then put the gun to his head and ended it. The girl flinched at the shot and survived a headshot. The new boyfriend died. I always think about that one interaction. My sister's fiancé murdered her. Red flags? Well, not really, except he was suddenly into many things that my sister was into. Like 1,000,000% became his persona. He wasn't his own person, as was super clingy and needy. Found out a few weeks before he killed her he was suddenly into guns. She wasn't. Tried to leave. Murder-suicide. So I went to a big university that had a weird close-knit feel. There was this girl that I knew but I wasn't friends with. She was nice but very over-the-top bubbly, enthusiastic about everything and super extroverted. She was just a little much for me. Good in very, very small doses. She started dating this guy who was the opposite of her. Shy, quiet, followed her around like a little puppy. I can't remember now if it was over a holiday break, like Thanksgiving or Christmas, or if it was just a weekend, but we all found out that his parents, younger brother and dog were all killed in a house fire. Everyone felt so bad for him. Her family took him in. Support poured out from everywhere. Then we find out he killed all of them and then set the house on fire to cover it up. Shocked everyone. He didn't murder her, but he sure tried. Stabbed 24 times. He was unable to sleep. He was constantly talked about his medication and anxiety and his inability to sleep. He was trying to get a medical leave when his wife left him. He snapped a few weeks later. We didn't really miss the red flags. We just didn't expect him to do it since he had never laid a hand on her. My ex-girlfriend's stepfather would not let her mother leave the house with their youngest child. I witnessed a couple of dramatic conflicts with yelling and blocking of the driveway. Turns out she wanted a divorce and was cheating on him with a convicted pedophile. I was a fairly sheltered teen at the time and pretty much tried to ignore what I didn't understand. He stabbed her to death in their kitchen. Even though it was clear something was not right, I still could not have imagined that outcome. My cousin's husband. When they first got married, he was a decent guy, though I had only met him after they got married. I thought it was weird that she had a kid that wasn't living with them, but I was young and brushed it off. Over a decade later, I find out he was abusive and she was divorcing him. He shot her outside her workplace. It was on THR News. Thankfully he was caught not long after. Not quite murder, but the guy in the apartment next to mine snapped and stabbed 2 builders and a dog, and went on the run. Everyone ended up being fine, though. The red flags started appearing one by one the longer I knew him. He ended up stalking me after I finally told him to leave me alone, which is a whole other story. But after the stabbing, I was making chit chat in the hall with the policeman who was put in charge of the stalking case. They were going through his Act 4 evidence for both cases. And he just casually let me know that in the guy's bathtub, there were half a dozen dead rat carcasses that had had their brains bashed in with a hammer. My neighbor had always joked about if I ever saw a rat, he'd take care of it for me. So yeah, suffice to say, I got the F out of town until they caught him. Girl I knew in high school is in jail currently for murder. Killed a guy over some drug dispute. Biggest red flag I can think of is that she once pulled a knife on a friend of mine who walked into the bathroom as she, the murderer, was about to beat up some girl in the bathroom. None. My dad met Pat Sherrill when he was at an Air Force school, Guard or Reserves. I can't remember which one my dad was in then, and Pat was out in Washington State for something and came to my grandparents for dinner. Nice guy, super friendly. I was in high school and on the wrestling team, and he had wrestled in college, so he chatted with me about wrestling. It was a year or two later that he went to the post office in Edmonds, okay, and killed 14 people and wounded 6 others before killing himself. My dad got questioned by the police because he called them and told him that he was friends with the guy. The law enforcement person who talked to my dad told him that he had gone to the base and got the weapons out of the base armory, but you never would have thought that he was going to be that guy. My cousin went to school with a guy, stabbed his mother 66 times and then lived in the house for months with her decomposing body, then fled the province. He says that while he was kinda quiet, there were others that were even quieter and he never stuck out. He still has him added on PlayStation. He's been offline for a while, as the police did catch him, but I guess we'll know when he gets out. It's not that I didn't notice them, but all the adults seemed to think it would go away if they ignored it. He was creepy AF, carving Nazi and anarchy symbols into desks. walls, and once the back of his hand. Talked a bunch about death and stuff. You could tell he really liked freaking people out. 15 years later, he kills a guy and all the parents are so shocked. His parents were so nice. Who could have seen it coming? Looking back, he wasn't any worse than any of the other people I was around back then. Mostly quiet, sometimes moody but always respectful. And always at the bar with us but never completely trashed. If I'd have had to pick who I thought a murder would have ended up being, out of everyone I knew, he definitely wouldn't have been in my top 10 or 20. We even almost went out a couple times, but something always seemed to happen. I never would have guessed that years later he would have chopped up his girlfriend, who I shared a lot of the same physical traits with, and thrown her parts in a river. But it happened. No red flags. Male 18, one of 3 to earn internships to Boeing. No criminal history. Would have trusted him with my kids. Very nice kid. Lived with his mom. Argument with girlfriend X. We think while drinking. Hit her with a mug and killed her. Panicked and cut her up and placed her in two bag suitcases. One bag was found on a beach and they later found the other. 28 years for the cutting. Stepbrother.